Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to build and paint the BTA Fighter from the classic movie Enemy Mine. I bought this kit from Giblets Creation, although now they often just go by the Giblets. They are a husband and wife team and they make all sorts of cool sci-fi kits. I've built some of them up before on this channel, so I'll leave a link to one or two of them above. These parts still have some of the excess plastic on from the build plate, so I'm going to remove all that with a small file. And once those edges are clean, I can start gluing them together. With this being a PLA print, there are loads of layer lines to get rid of. So I'm going to assemble this in sections, and that will make it easier to work on those layer lines. Normal super glue works very well for gluing these parts together. So always pay to check the alignment first, because you'll have a couple of seconds to work with. So I'm just assembling the main body and the two side engines. There's a window either side of the cockpit. These come as separate pieces, but I'm going to glue them shut, because if I glue them open, I'm also going to have to make the cockpit, which at this scale isn't going to work very well. But it's nice to have options when making these kits. Since there's a small gap around these windows, I fill it using super glue. Once I've checked the screenshots, I realised there's an extra piece on these parts. This is actually a support piece for when it's printed, but it wasn't immediately obvious for me, because I had this printed on my behalf. There's also a grill hidden behind this part, so I just need to prise it off without breaking anything. It took a little while, but I got there in the end. There's just one more piece I want to add for now, and it's this piece here, and this is supposed to slot in underneath the ship. But this is the nature of 3D printing. Some pieces warp or bend out of shape, so I'll just file it down until it fits. And this is the part where the landing gear comes out of, but the landing gear will be the last piece I glue into place, as it's too fragile. It's a little bit of a snug fit, but this piece goes in nicely. A little bit of super glue will ensure that it doesn't fall out. And now I spray on some filler primer. And each layer of this stuff you put down will slowly fill in the gaps. It's quite a lengthy process swapping between sanding and spraying. So rather than bore you with every single step of the process, I'll quickly go through the main steps. I sand and file at the surface areas, trying to make sure all the seams are now seamless. And when I can't proceed any further, I spray on another layer of filler primer. And for certain areas I find it quicker and easier to use model putty, and this is applied with this sculpting tool. And once it's in place, I wet my finger and push it into all the gaps. This is predominantly done on the window areas, which need to be really smooth. Then I use the finest sandpaper that I have and do what is called a wet sanding. The water creates less friction and therefore gives a finer sand. Using a hobby knife, I go over the panel lining again, because some of these have filled in a little bit with the filler primer. And now I can start gluing into place some of these pieces. Once again, I find super glue best for this. I apply the two side wings which attach to the main thrusters. These are supposed to attach at a specific angle, so I have to do a little bit of guesswork. Until the engine pieces are stuck on, I won't be able to tell if it's right or not. In the end they were slightly out of alignment, so I just used the heat gun to warp the plastic and move it into a better shape. And now I have a load of new gaps to fill in. So once again it's model putty to the rescue, and a wet finger pushes it into the gap really well. And once that's dry, I have a lot more sanding to do. So now I have 3 smaller wings to attach, along with 3 small engines. And this is the one that goes on top of the craft. The process is the same for each one, so I'll spare you the agony of watching it another 2 more times. So the last 2 parts to glue on are the landing gear and the hatch. Since this model kit is grey anyway, I give it a spray with primer. As this is the lightest grey I can get my hands on, so once the underneath is done, I flip it over and spray the top. I dry brush some white over the raised areas. This will help them stand out a little bit, because as it stands, this model is very one tone. Next up, I paint the window black. I'll add a coat of gloss to this a little bit later on. Using some black panel liner is great for adding more additional details. This helps to separate some of the panels and the recessed areas, and this is a crucial step to help it look less like a model. The only metallic part I can find on this model is the landing gear, but still it's nice to see a different colour. Just to add a little bit more variety and to break up the monotone colour scheme, I painted some of the panels in a lighter shade of grey, and as you can already see, it makes a big difference. Next, I add a variety of weathering powders. This will help to represent things like dust, which had built up from landing on various planets. Added some darker shades underneath to represent mud, which was rubbed along the bottom. And I also added some black for the scoring around the engine ports. So all these weathering powders combined should help create a spaceship which has been well used. As you can see, I'm adding some nice streaks, as well as sooting up some of the grills. Weathering powders is very messy stuff to work with, and the more you handle the model, the more it will come off. So you have to seal it in before you go any further, and as per usual I use my matte sealer, as I find the gloss stuff a little bit too shiny. For the windows I brush on a gloss finish, and this will make it look nice and shiny, just like a window. And with that, that's the BTA Fighter from the Enemy Mine movie completed. As is typical with most PLA prints, it's difficult to remove every single layer line, but at least for the most part they're not very obvious. I believe the original model had a BTA logo on one side, although that's not entirely clear on the screenshots, so I've left it out on mine. And for anybody who hasn't seen this movie, go see it. It's classic 80s sci-fi, and it stars a young Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, if I can do it, so can you.